Welcome back to ILA Radio, where we tune into all ways of knowing. I'm your host, Laura Lynn, and joining us today we have Joshua Onysko, the CEO and founder of Pangea Organics and Alpine Provisions. We're going to learn so much from Joshua, so let's dive in.
Hi, Joshua. Thank you so much for being here on ILA Radio.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Awesome. So, to jump right in, what was your first job?
Oh man, my first job is I was actually a child actor and model when I was 7 to 9.
How
I was a
cool.
stage actor. I did some made for TV stuff, some crappy magazine ad stuff.
That's awesome. So, was it something that you've always wanted to do, or how did it come about?
Originally, it was actually for a way for me to drop out of school because I hated school, but then I ended up being pretty good at it. So I kept getting casted, and I really enjoyed it. And there was definitely a moment in my life where I thought that's where my life might go, but I decided that I didn't want that.
So, what do you do now?
Now I am a serial entrepreneur. I have a bunch of different companies, mostly in the organic skin and body care industry. I'm a perfumer, but I am working on a few new products that are outside of that realm, but mostly work with plants.
How cool. Was there ever a time where you ended up loving school, or has it always been this?
No. I mean, I loved I had like an art teacher that I really loved in school that was really inspirational because I'm an artist and so we saw eye to eye. But in general, I think that most educational systems, especially elementary school and high school, are pretty dated. And in my opinion, I would say 80% of the teachers don't have any passion for what they're doing. And so I think it's a big waste of time for a lot of people, especially these days. I mean, this was 25 years ago, but these days, you're born with a supercomputer in your hands. And if you're really wanting to learn more about the world and about what you can do in this world to make a difference and make money, you're much better off spending your time doing your own research rather than attending school. That's my own opinion.
Definitely, I definitely agree. I think like as adults, it's easier to know what we could look up. But I feel like as kids, there it's like the whole world's the oyster. Like where to even start? So I think that there does need to be some kind of structure. Do you have any recommendations that could ameliorate the school system?
I mean, I think that, the thing about kids is they have this amazing thing called the child's mind is they're always very curious and they're inspired by a lot of things. And I think that really honing in on that and using that time in your life to kind of move throughout choices without the fears that a lot of adults have around making choices. And people are often kind of stuck in the dogma of what if I choose the wrong thing? And my opinion is there is no wrong thing because the wrong thing is not choosing, right? The handcuffs of indecision. And most people will spend their entire lives just in the bardo of indecision and they will never leave that because what if? And I think that most entrepreneurs will tell you that, what they started out with is not what they ended up with, but the journey to get from point A to point B is riddled with new decisions and pivots and changes. And but you'll never reach those things if you just don't start doing something that is not status quo.
Definitely. So looking at your chart, you have Libra in the third house, and the third house is typically related to early childhood schooling education. And so the
Mhm.
Libra part was there's probably like a part of you that wanted to like be a people pleaser because Libras are really people pleasing. But always correct me if I'm wrong. And so getting out of that schooling area, now coming back to higher learning, you have Pluto and the North Node in the third house. So, do you have any tips on how to make these decisions, because you're right, I think so many people are stuck in this indecision mode.
Yeah, I would say that I definitely have never been a people pleaser, even when I was a kid. I was the
Okay, good.
exact
Yeah.
opposite. Um, I, it's something I just wholeheartedly don't believe in, because I believe in being who you are and telling your truth. And
Yeah.
instead of worrying about having a huge friend network, I think it's more important to have, 5 people that you keep really close, that truly know who you are, inspire you to be a better person. I think in this culture, especially with social media, people are obsessed with collecting friends and followers, but you are a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're not cultivating those kind of deeper relationships, you'll find yourself in a pretty vapid void at some point in your life. And really seeing that you're not surrounded by people that are inspiring you to be the best version of yourself. As far as making better decisions, first you have to remove the fear of what if. What if is useless. It's good for helping you make better decisions, but only to a certain point, right? You have to, at some point, trust in your intuition and your gut feelings that are educated. Like, you have to do your homework. So I wouldn't tell someone, go out and start some company that has zero hope or promise, because, the world is changing so fast. But I think that, there is a certain point where the study of information ends and the adoption of gut instinct has to begin. And I think that people are terrified of making a wrong decision. And I often find that they don't want to be embarrassed, right? And so I think that you gotta, like, not care about what other people think as much. Care about what you think and what you're doing and what inspires you in the morning. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to live your life for you. No one's going to die for you. No one's going to pick up the pieces for you. You need to be, you need to stand in your own strength and stand by your decisions, and know that it's okay to fail. Because as long as you don't lose the gusto to keep going, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is just quitting and not believing in yourself and not trying. That's failure.
Yeah, and so I think that so many people who are successful, I feel like every person who is successful had to have a failure at some point, but it was all part of the journey to get to where they're at. And I think that you're right, like the gut feelings or intuition, it plays a major role in that. So how would you define intuition? Like how does it come to you?
I mean, your life is basically a cultivation of all your experiences, your childhood, your friendship, everything that you've observed through the 5 senses creates a vehicle within yourself to have intuition around some things. And I feel like one of the things I'm noticing with, millennials and Gen Z and now Alpha is there is a rise in, like, the coddling of kids as they're growing up, and they're not allowed to make mistakes and get in trouble and have adventures and maybe get hurt. I saw something the other day. A comedian was like, "You remember when you would go to school and half your class would have a cast on at the end of the summer?" He's like, "I haven't seen a cast in 10 years." And it made me think it's true. I haven't seen a cast in a long time. And I'm like, why are people not breaking bones anymore? It's because we're becoming too safe of a society. We're not taking the risks that we used to take. We're not trusting in ourselves. And I'm not saying, like, go out and ride a bike through New York City without a helmet. I'm just saying, like, I feel like there was something really beautiful about growing up at a time. I'm Gen X, so I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, where you were allowed to make bad decisions. And I think about it as like the caterpillar and the butterfly, and like having to struggle through the chrysalis to become a butterfly. I think about that a lot when I think about humans. And some people with the absolute worst childhoods became the absolute most amazing people in my life. And I've taken note of that over the years. And I've noticed a lot of the different parenting techniques with friends of mine that have kids and just kids out in the world, and how dramatically different they come out depending on what kind of parenting they had.
I definitely agree. Talking about the caterpillar and butterfly, that when a butterfly comes out of the chrysalis, if someone were to break them open, like break open the chrysalis to help the butterfly, or to like try to help it, you're actually hurting it because it needs to go through that struggle to build strong wings so that it can fly. So
Yep.
I definitely agree with needing to do it on your own and to take risks. And this aligns perfectly with your ninth house in Aries, because Aries is the ultimate risk taker, and ninth house is higher learning, like with your belief systems. But it's also the very independent in the way of knowing the path, but knowing you're going to have to fight through the path and work hard through that path. Is that what you've experienced in your career?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places in my career where I could have made a decision that would have made my life a lot easier and more financially viable, but it just didn't align with my personal values. So I want to wake up every morning knowing that my decisions, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, are aligned with who I am as a person. Because at the end of the day, that is the absolute most important thing to me, is who am I in this world? And I will never trade my values for money or power or status. To me, that is the actual form of dying while you're alive.
Spoken like a true Leo rising, as a Leo in the first house is shining your light and not letting anybody bring you down for it. This is also related to what you were saying earlier about being a child actor, with having this glow inside that just needs to come out, but you have your Saturn around it too. So Saturn constricts. So how have you been able to build this system of values and to be able to stay true to them whilst not going all over the place? You said that you're a serial entrepreneur. So how do you delegate each project or each company to be able to get it to its fullest?
I'll let you know when I figure it out. I
Can you
have
talk
no
about the
idea.
struggle?
Can I talk about the what?
The struggle of trying to figure it out?
I mean, I think the struggle is being someone who has ADHD and always has ideas. Like, ideas are a dime a dozen. And I love watching bringing ideas to life. Um, the actual like management and building of a company is not as fascinating as bringing something that is in your head out into reality. And I think a lot of times people don't understand what an incredible journey that is, of imagining something in your brain and working months and sometimes years to bring that thing to fruition. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a play, or it could be an iPhone case. It could be, a food product. It could be a restaurant. But the vast majority of people don't really have that journey. And I don't know what the statistics are, but like a lot of people they have this idea like, oh, like I'm not an artist. I'm like, anybody's an artist. Are you going to be a profound artist that sells paintings all over the world? I don't know. But you have an imagination and you have a brain and you have dreams and you have the ability to bring those dreams into reality. The the question is, are you going to do it?
I think that's the hard part. Going back to the Aries in your ninth house, it's about actually getting started and actually doing the work. You can imagine all day long, but if you're not putting in the action, nothing's going to happen with it. So, how do you know when an idea is worth pursuing? Like how you said, putting years into an idea. Are all ideas worth pursuing, or how do you differentiate that?
I go trial by fire. I think about 10 different things, and I think about ikigai a lot, which is a Japanese term of the intersectionality of what's good for the world, what you're good at, what you believe in, and what can make you money. I think that's what the quadrangle is. Or and I was like, and if it doesn't fit that, then it's not really worth my time, right? I would never do anything just for money. I would never do anything just because. It has to like feed my soul in some way. And so I think like, and then sometimes you have to move outside your comfort zone. Like right now, I'm developing a new kitchen small appliance, which is so outside of my realm. But I've been pretty successful at it so far, and we're going to be launching at the end of the summer. And I think it's amazing.
Oh,
And I learned so much about manufacturing and design and aesthetics and materials. And even if the product flops, which I do not think it will, I learned so much, and I can take those learnings and do something else. You know,
yeah,
it's
I think
like,
it's
it's
just
not like I
about
think about it
building.
as like, yeah, it's about building up to something and like allowing yourself the breath to fail. It's okay. It's okay to fail.
I typically talk about Capricorn as being this mountain that is so hard to climb and you're working all the way up there, but you have it in the fifth house, which is about expression. So it's kind of like you enjoy taking these hikes, these metaphorical hikes up this mountain for fun. And if it gets what you need at the top, then great. If not, there's another one to climb. And so it's like never
Yeah.
ending in that way. So how do you get the joy out of it? Because some people would say like climbing up is so hard and like complain about it. How do you stick with the joy?
Well, you gotta not be lazy. Like laziness is one of the worst traits a person can have, because if you're too lazy to achieve your own dreams, then you really have to dig deep down and find out like at what point in your childhood did you acquire laziness and why? Because humans aren't inherently lazy. Humans are inherently adventurers and pioneers and survivors. That's actually who we are. That's why we're here today. We are the reduction of millions and millions and millions of years of evolution to be here today. I mean, look at what everything we've accomplished. 10 years ago, there was a major fire on my ranch here in Colorado, and I lost like 80% of my trees. And I wanted to cut all the dead trees down and plant new ones. And so at the beginning, I had a chainsaw, obviously, because it was like thousands of trees. But then one day I was like, I want to see what it's like to use a two-man saw. I think everyone listening knows what that is. It's this giant 8 foot long tooth saw with two handles on it. And I wanted to see what it took to cut through like an 18-inch pine tree. And I was with another buddy of mine who is a bodybuilder, and we cut one tree down, and it was amazing. But the amount of energy that it took to cut that one tree down is just astounding. And then you look around where we are, and for better or for worse, when we started settling this country and stealing the land from the natives, unfortunately, to survive, people had to cut thousands of trees down to build a house, or you would die in the winter. And so they had to cut not just one tree down, but then they had to saw it in planks and cut other trees down and cut the limbs off. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that much drive is so incredible. And I think about that as it pertains to allowing yourself to bring an idea to life. Because to me, when you don't live an inspired life, you are heading towards that winter and you are dying. You're just dying inside. You're not physically dying, but you become a shell of who you potentially could be. And you need to fight against that laziness, that indecision, that fear with every cell in your body to wake up one morning and feel truly alive. You have to do that.
Yeah, you have Uranus in Scorpio. So Uranus is the sign of rebellion and moving forward, progression, and Scorpio is about going deep. And so I think it's exactly what you're saying, that you have to constantly be moving, because if you stand still and be lazy, then you're not living. You are dead, metaphorically.
Mhm.
So how do you keep moving? Is it through these ideas? That do they just come to you? Do you have to journal, take a walk? How do they come?
A lot of it is through walking. I do a lot of, because I live mostly in New York City, so I do a lot of walking. But sometimes it's just observing the world and see where you could make it a little bit better in your own little way. And it can be one of the most ridiculous small things you could imagine, or it could be a really huge monumental idea. But again,
Yeah,
you have to just start somewhere.
yeah, I think that starting point is very key. But it's cool that you were talking about looking at how to make things more perfect, because you have Virgo in the second house, and Virgo is a sign of perfection, and perfection in the way, like, obviously we're never going to be 100% perfect, but perfection in the way, like, how can I fix this whatever in a tiny little degree? Like, what can I do to make this better? But Virgo is also associated with imagination. So, kind of in line with what we're talking about. Do you think that imagination is similar to intuition, or what do you think is the relationship between the two?
I think that they work together. I do not think they are two sides of the same coin, because imagination is your ability to think and dream of something, and intuition would be the part of your brain and your nervous system that convinces you that it's a good idea or not a good idea. Like we think about and dream about things all day. And how many times in your life have you heard of somebody saying, "Oh, I thought of that 10 years ago." I'm like, "That's cool. That person did it." That person, not only thought about it, but then actually brought it to life. And so that's the value. The value is not the fact that someone thought about this 10 years before it came out. The value is, did you have the intuition and the drive to bring it to life?
So, what would you say is the first step to bring an idea to life?
Well, the first step is getting over your fears, right? And the
Hmm.
next step is, depending on what it is, it's prototyping. You know, if it's a cake business, you bake cakes and you have your friends try them, and then you give them to people who aren't your friends, who are going to tell you the truth. And if it's a skincare product, you let your friends try them and give you reactions. If it's a restaurant, you try lots of different foods. I mean, everything has a starting point. Um, you have to prototype it, go out and get feedback, and figure it out.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about your Taurus in the midheaven. And so you talked about nature and your perfuming business. So I feel like these are very Taurus traits. Midheaven is where your career is supposed to be in, and it seems like it's aligned. So could you talk more about how nature has influenced your career?
I mean, so far, every single part of my life has been centered around plants. Um, I'm vegan. I only eat plants. I grow plants. I extract plants. All of my products are made from plants. And so I think it's heavily been influenced by the fact that I truly believe in the power of plants. And I think I started Pangea because I found that the vast majority of products on the shelves weren't actually using plants. And if they were, they weren't actually using plants the way they should be used, because plants are extremely powerful. But the way we extract them and the way that we're using them in the products that you buy in stores is not what their true value is.
Why do you think that we have overlooked the power of plants? I feel like so many people just walk along the street and don't even notice plants. Like they don't know what kind of plants are around them. How could we get better at that as a society?
Well, it's something you have to take interest in. From a curiosity standpoint, you can now just open your phone and literally point your phone at something. It'll tell you what it is. From a entrepreneurial standpoint, you need to have care and curiosity and desire to create something that is truly authentic, because the vast majority of products that are on the market, like in my world, in the cosmetic world, are just using plants as marketing, not plants as intelligence, not plants as the thing that's actually making it work. They just want to, I always think about the herbal essence commercials from like the 90s with the woman showering out in the jungle and there's like herbs flying all around, but there's no plants in those products. It's literally a bottle full of petrochemicals. But they were like, oh, people like to think they're more natural than they are. Let's sell that. And that's really what the world I'm in is. It's a lot of bottles with plants on them, but there's no plants in the bottles. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
So what got you interested in plants and working with them?
um, just being outside and just being in nature and seeing how profound the theater of nature actually is. I do quite a bit of traveling. I started traveling internationally when I was 18 years old, down in Central and South America. And if you just go outside and watch how plants interact with themselves and the outer world around them, it's truly incredible. So 10 years ago, like I said, there was a big fire in this property. And back then it was just all pine trees, just thick pine trees. And underneath pine trees is usually just pine needles because it blocks the sun and nothing really grows and the needles drop and inoculate the ground. But when the trees burned down, I watched this mountain that I live on completely transform. And now in any visual spot on the mountain, there's 100 different visual species of plants just right in front of me. And they all just became what the mountain is now, right? They moved in because there was an opportunity. And the opportunity was to thrive in an area that they normally couldn't grow in. And just seeing how plants interact with the earth in that way is just truly inspirational. And they are so intelligent. The way they have evolved with us over millions of years is just absolutely astounding. And then when you dive deeper into the plant kingdom and you realize that each one of these plants has abilities, has strengths, has attributes that we can either learn about and stay away from because they're poisonous, or extremely medicinal or fragrant and beautiful and can be extracted into making something that's truly beautiful. But we have to take the time to be curious and to take that adventure and that journey into figuring out what each one of these plants has to offer.
You have Venus and Mars in Taurus in this 10th house with near your midheaven. So 10th house is about your legacy, reputation, and Venus is about your love, and Mars is motivation. So it's like you love plants and you're motivated by them, and this is what your legacy is. So could you tell us more about Pangea?
Pangea is an organic skincare company that's been around for 23 years. It's using really beautiful plant extracts from all over the world. We only work with essential oils, no fragrances. And we were really the first company that married current scientifically backed technology with organic ingredients. And then the entire line is plastic free, mainly because I'm a scuba diver and I just woke up 8 years ago and I just could not stand the amount of plastic that is in our rivers, in our oceans. My industry produces 140 billion pieces of plastic a year. And there's really no reason for it. And so I took both my brands plastic free. The other one's called Alpine Provisions, which is hair and body care. And, we only believe in using natural ingredients.
How incredible. So you have mentioned these multiple companies. How do you take care of all of them? Like, how do you schedule yourself, or what's like the day to day look like?
I think a lot of it is just having a ritual around your day and staying grounded and staying focused on one task before you go to another one and not seeing everything as a fire and having incredible people. I'm blessed with having an incredible team, and especially right now, like being able to use AI to help streamline literally every process of your business is incredible. And anybody entering the workplace now that is aspiring to be an entrepreneur, I will tell you that there has never been a time that is better than right now on earth to start a company, with the amount of streamlining you can do through large language models.
Mhm. So normally people would say that being pro AI and techie and being one with nature are opposite sides of the spectrum. How do you marry them so beautifully together?
Every technology, um, whether it's good or bad, depends on how you use it, right? So you can use anything for good or bad. And so I think that being with nature and allowing the tools that we have in the present modern day to help facilitate that. Like I said, like I have apps on my phone. I just spent a year traveling around the world, and I was in the Amazon, and I could just pull out my phone and identify anything that I want. And I was even identifying some plants in the Amazon that an elder native in the Amazon didn't actually know what it was, because there's millions of plants in there. And so, again, like using technology to find people around the world to collaborate with. I was able to use technology to find incredible nonprofits in the Amazon, helping regenerate the Amazon. That would have been so difficult to find them 20 years ago without the internet, without AI.
Yeah, I think that technology is like a culmination of all of the academic inquiries that have happened over the last couple centuries, and it's all being compiled into this technology, for instance, like the internet.
Yeah.
So it obviously gives like points or reasons to follow reason or intellect, and so I see a lot of people choose what technology or reason tells them versus thinking about it for themselves or listening to their intuition. So how what would you say to those people? Do you have any tips on how to have this more holistic view?
Everything is like, what are you using it for? Like you can fight against something all you want, but it's here, right? So in 20 years, you're gonna be like, I fought against AI. I'm like, cool, it's still here. And you could have spent that time using it for good. You could have spent that time using it to create more peace and tranquility in the world. You could have used it to preserve intelligent plants in the Amazon. You could have been using it for a lot of the things. Nobody fighting AI right now is going to win that battle. It's just not going to happen.
I think you're right. It's like how when the World Wide Web first came out, people were against it too, or even like with social media, people are against it. But you're right. There's so much good that can come from these different platforms that fighting against it is pointless. And so you have Cancer in the 11th house, and so I always talk about Cancer as a little crab with like a hard shell but a soft interior. And the 11th house is about community, and you also have Mercury here, so communication. So how do you see these different elements help you create your community? You talked about having the five close friends. Is it based off that, or how do you find community?
One of my friends, well, how I build community is I'm a chef, so I've been hosting dinner parties since I was 16 years old. And one of my friends at a dinner party a couple of years ago called me the popular outsider. And I was like, I could not have thought of a better way of describing me, because I have a fairly large global community, but I don't I don't try to spend a exorbitant amount of time with all of them. Like, I've met a lot of people and I appreciate a lot of people. And if I can help them any way, I will. But I really keep my nucleus pretty tight, because we only have so much energy as a human. And I think, as I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, it's really important to value the 5 people you spend the most time with versus trying to amass a large following or large community.
How cool that you're a chef, because that's one of the cancer traits. And so that just like fell in line perfectly. But then now we could talk about Aquarius. And Aquarius is that outsider kind of mentality. And you have it in your sixth house, which is about work. So it's like you're literally revolutionizing the way that people work and have this day-to-day routine. You're revolutionizing that by being able to, how you were talking about keeping your energy within, like not being able to overspend your energy. Could you talk about how you do that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, and by the way, I am not the master of what I'm saying is what I aspire to do. But when I wake up in the morning, I have a ritual. I do breath work. I light some incense. I make some tea. I calm my body and my mind, and I prepare myself. I don't just wake up and start thumbing away at my phone, because I don't think that's really healthy. And I think trying to focus on one task before you move to the next, it's like eating food. Finish one bite, put your fork down. When you're done swallowing that first bite, then start the second bite. And it's the same thing with work. I really try to aspire to like not be frantic, not be chaotic, try to be organized.
So you have your moon in Pisces, and you were talking about having a routine and really getting grounded spiritually first at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of your days. And having the moon sign in Pisces, it shows that your heart just wants this like togetherness. Is that true? Where you're trying to bring all these different pieces together to make them come together?
Yeah, I would say that has been a big part of my life, always trying to like connect the right people, bring the right people together. Again, I do that a lot through dinner parties, but I would say that I'm a good connector when it comes to just business and life in general.
Yeah, and that also gets represented by Gemini. Gemini is like the social butterfly, and it's also the sign of loving a little of everything, which it seems like you do. You have Jupiter here, and Jupiter is about expansion. So this could be related to being like that connector you were talking about, but it's also about like expanding your own self personally. So would you say that by connecting with different people, you grow internally as well?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I haven't really
Well,
done a deep dive on that thought process before.
okay. Well, maybe we could tease it out a little bit, because it seems like it's through your companies and your higher learning and nature that has really shaped you and transformed you. So with people, obviously, you couldn't run a company without having people on your team or people you're selling to. So how else do you see people playing a role in your career path? Like, was there ever a time where somebody said, "Hey, you should be doing this or doing that," and you didn't listen to them, or how did that whole?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my girlfriend the other like a couple weeks ago asked me um like what I would have done differently in my early 20s, and I said I wish I had listened to some of my mentors more, because I was just kind of like young, a little punkish, like most people are, and there were certain things that they were trying to teach me that I was not grokking. And yeah, I would say that like you have to take it with a grain of salt because every generation is living in a different world than the previous generation. So there are some things when you're listening to older generation and you're like, oh my God, that's so outdated information. But there's always wisdom with elders, and surrounding yourself with really amazing mentors is important.
So how do we, I think like the main question of the podcast is how do we know what we know? And like how you're talking about like with elders, of course they have this wisdom, but how do we know what is going to be applicable to us versus what we should not listen to? I feel like that's the hardest question of all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer to that. That's a unique proposition that happens inside of you every time you hear something. Meaning, anytime you're walking throughout the world and you hear someone say something, especially now, it's like we have never had more access to information in the history of humanity. There has never been more misinformation in the history of humanity. I mean, honestly, it is astounding the things that people believe that they see on social media. They just think they don't understand that anybody with a phone can just say whatever they want. And there's no like scientific backing to it, but we've somehow convinced a majority of people to believe in completely false information. And it's terrifying to watch. Um, yeah, it's truly terrifying to watch. And so I don't really have the answer to that, but I know that like birds triangulate their heads to get better three-dimensional pictures. I think that people really need to start triangulating. You can't just see something and be like, "Oh, I'm going to repost that because this sounds good and this appeals to my belief system and I want other people to believe it too." That is terrifying, a terrifying way to get information out into the world. And like I would never repost something just because it appeals to my own views of the world unless I know it's true. And when I say I know it's true, meaning like I have done some research to find out if the information that I'm putting out there is false or accurate, because most people posting information on the internet right now are doing so just to get money, and they're trying to build followings around like this new way of thinking. My favorite one right now is the carnivore diet. And I'm like, there are thousands of people that believe that they will be healthier if they just eat meat. And I'm like, oh my God, this is this is not good. But you know, we have to go through this as a culture. And I wish I knew where the end was, but I would assume it's probably not for another 5 to 10 years when there's some way, like maybe it's the alpha generation that is going to triangulate information more and start debunking all the nonsense that's happening online right now.
Yeah, I think that's like part of why I started this podcast is to figure out like how do we triangulate or how do we figure out what is real and what is not. Being in academia myself, everything like astrology for instance or anything that wasn't backed in this scientific method, these standards was not true. But astrology, as I've seen even here with you but throughout all of the other interviews that I've done, it just becomes more and more true. And that's actually why I started learning astrology, was because I didn't think that it was true. Like, how could a horoscope be accurate? But the more that I learn into the actual science of astrology and how all the different planets come together, it makes sense why science wouldn't work for it, because you would need 100 U's with different birth charts to be able to test it accurately. But just
Yep.
because we don't have that doesn't mean that there's no basis of truth in astrology. So now looking at misinformation and fake news, I think that it is through intuition. Like your intuition will say like, hey, this might not be true, hey, go look something else up. But I don't think that people are at that point to listen to that intuition, especially when intuition is counterintuitive,
Yeah.
where your reason just like overrides it. So, could you talk about maybe how it is for you personally?
each time that new information comes, how do you differentiate between fake news or truth?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to critical thought, right? You need to think about things critically, because 1 + 1 doesn't always just equal 2. And I know that sounds kind of stupid to say, but it's like an example, going back to the carnivore diet. Someone posted, this fake news about a Harvard study about the carnivore diet, and it got tens of thousands of people chiming in on it. And some guy was like, I've been doing the carnivore diet for 2 months and I lost 30 pounds and I've never felt better. Da, 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 da. And any nutritionist will tell you that, yes, if you go on into ketosis for 30 to 60 days, you're going to lose a ton of weight because your body is burning fat. And just because your body feels better in the first 2 months does not mean that it's going to feel better in 6 months or a year or 2 years, because you're just eating extremely acidic foods, and most disease comes from acidity. So you have to, again, think about things critically. Just because something feels good now doesn't mean it's going to be feeling good in the long run. Like, if you go out and smoke a cigarette and you love nicotine, it's going to feel great because your body likes the nicotine. It feels good. It's like it's a drug releasing dopamines. Doesn't mean you should be smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for the next 40 years. And I think really anytime we're hearing information, especially when it has to do with geopolitics and your health, please do yourself a favor and please use critical thinking to understand the information better and figure out if it's the best thing for you, if the information is true based on empirical data. Because the amount of fake reviews and studies that are happening online right now, it's insane. People build these classrooms and these news centers to look like it's official news. And they don't understand that all this stuff is being created in your hometown in Los Angeles. They're using studios to create this fake news because likes and comments and equal money. People are getting paid to propagate this nonsense. And again, it's terrifying. Please use critical thought. Please triangulate. Please look things up. There's so many sites online that will help you understand if you should be believing in something or debunking it. And at the end of the day, you have to use your best judgment.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being here, Joshua. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can you please share where people can find you?
I'm on Instagram, joshua.scott.onysko, Onysko. My brands are pangeaorganics.com and alpineprovisions.co.com. We sell online and on Amazon. And that's pretty much it. I have a Medium page, but I only post on it like once every 3 months if I have something I really want to talk about. But you can just Google my name and it'll pop up.
Awesome.
Thanks, Laura.
And that's it. Thank you so much for being here. If you learned something or if you just liked the episode, please give this podcast a 5-star review and comment below. How do you see us fixing education? Do you trust your intuition? Do you trust the process? What is your experience like to these questions about nature and AI and everything else? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to learn more about our guest or myself, please check out the link below, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.